Welcome to Unbound American Stories, the channel where we uncover the lives of our forgotten heroes. We list the sources of the information we found in the notes to help you dig deeper into their life and accomplishments for those who would like to learn more. And now for an amazing story. Virginia Hall, the spy with a wooden leg. Virginia Hall was born on April 6, 1906, into a world that had already decided what a woman's life should look like. Her family, wealthy and prominent in Baltimore, Maryland, expected her to marry well, host elegant gatherings, and live a life of quiet privilege. Her father, Edwin Ned Lee Hall, was a successful businessman, and her mother, Barbara Virginia Hamill, was his secretary, and later, his wife. Virginia grew up in a household where tradition was valued, but she was anything but traditional. From an early age, she was stubborn, curious, and fiercely independent, traits that would later make her one of the most dangerous spies of World War II. Her family affectionately nicknamed her Dindy, but there was nothing delicate about her ambitions. While other girls her age were taught to embroider and plan dinner parties, Virginia dreamed of adventure. She spent her childhood hunting, fishing, and hiking in the Maryland countryside, developing a resilience that would serve her well in the years to come. But her true passion was languages. She studied French, German, and Italian at Radcliffe and Barnard colleges, then traveled to Europe to continue her education at the Conservatoire de Paris and George Washington University. She fell in love with France, its culture, its people, and its spirit, and decided she wanted to make a life there. Her dream was to become a diplomat. In the 1930s, however, the U.S. State Department had little use for women in foreign service roles. Of the 1,500 American diplomats at the time, only 6 were women, and they were almost always relegated to clerical work. Virginia applied anyway, and was rejected 3 times. Each rejection only fueled her determination. If the world wouldn't give her a seat at the table, she'd build her own. Undeterred, she took a clerical job at the U.S. Embassy in Warsaw, Poland, in 1931. It wasn't the diplomatic career she envisioned, but it was a start. She was in Europe when Hitler rose to power, watching as the continent teetered on the brink of war. She saw the fear in the eyes of refugees fleeing Austria and Germany, heard the whispers of impending conflict, and knew she couldn't stand idly by. But before she could make her mark on the world, fate intervened in the most brutal way. In 1933, while on a hunting trip in Turkey, Virginia's life changed forever. The details of the accident are hazy. Some accounts say she slipped on a rock, others claim her shotgun misfired, but the result was undeniable. The blast struck her left foot, shattering bone and tearing flesh. She was rushed to a hospital where doctors fought to save her leg. For weeks, she endured excruciating pain as infection set in. Gangrene spread, and by the time the doctors made the decision to amputate, it was the only way to save her life. The amputation was performed below the knee. When Virginia woke, her left leg was gone. She was fitted with a crude wooden prosthesis, which she named Cuthbert. The pain was constant. The wooden leg chafed against her skin, leaving raw, bloody wounds. Learning to walk again was a battle in itself. She practiced for hours, determined to move without a limp, to prove to herself and the world that she was still capable. She even joked about it in letters to friends, writing, "Cuthbert is a bit of a nuisance, but I can manage." The accident could have broken her. Instead, it forged her into something stronger. As Craig Gralley, a retired CIA officer and author of Hall of Mirrors, later observed, the injury became a turning point. She had been given a second chance at life and wasn't going to waste it. Her injury, in fact, might have bolstered her resilience. But the world wasn't ready to accept a woman with a disability in a position of power. When she applied to the British Special Operations Executive, SOE, in 1940, her disability was seen as a liability. The SOE needed agents who could blend in, move quickly, and endure physical hardship. A woman with a limp didn't fit the mold, but Virginia wasn't asking for permission. She trained relentlessly, mastering wireless communication, sabotage techniques, and tradecraft. By 1941, she was ready for her first mission. Virginia's first assignment was in Vichy, France, where she posed as a New York Post correspondent. Her real mission? To organize and arm the French resistance. She arrived in Lyon, a city teeming with Nazi collaborators and informants, and got to work. Using her charm, wit, and fluency in French, she recruited a network of spies, saboteurs, and safe housekeepers. She coordinated airdrops of weapons and supplies, trained resistance fighters in guerrilla tactics, and helped downed Allied pilots escape to safety. Her wooden leg didn't slow her down. If anything, it made her more memorable. The Gestapo, led by the infamous Klaus Barbie, became obsessed with capturing La Dame qui boite, the Limping Lady. They had no idea who she was, but they knew she was dangerous. Barbie, known as the Butcher of Lyon, reportedly prioritized her capture, though the exact quote often attributed to him, "I would give anything to lay my hands on that Canadian bitch," is unverified. What is certain is that Virginia became one of the most wanted spies in Europe. Her methods were as clever as they were bold. She disguised herself as an elderly milkmaid, hobbling through checkpoints with a basket of cheese to smuggle messages. She posed as a journalist to gather intelligence on German troop movements. She even helped break out resistance fighters from a Gestapo prison by forging release papers and distracting the guards. By 1942, her network had grown so effective that the Nazis placed a bounty on her head. The Gestapo distributed wanted posters with a sketch of a woman with a limp, warning that she was the most dangerous of all Allied spies. But Virginia wasn't just a master of disguise. She was a master of deception. She once walked into a Gestapo office in Lyon posing as a French peasant woman to retrieve a confiscated radio transmitter. The guards, convinced by her act, handed it over without question. On another occasion, she smuggled a resistance fighter out of a hospital by disguising him as a nurse. Her ability to blend in, to become invisible, was her greatest weapon. One of Virginia's most daring feats was the prison break in Lyon, where she helped 12 resistance fighters escape from a Gestapo prison. The operation required meticulous planning and nerves of steel. First, she scouted the prison, noting the guards' routines, the layout of the cells, and the weak points in the security. She recruited a team of resistance fighters, including Dr. Jean Rousset, a physician who had access to the prison under the guise of providing medical care. Together, they forged release papers, bribed guards, and created distractions to draw attention away from the prisoners. On the night of the escape, Virginia posed as a nurse, arriving at the prison with a fake medical emergency. While the guards were distracted, the prisoners slipped out through a side door and into a waiting truck. The operation was a success, and the escaped fighters later rejoined the resistance, continuing the fight against the Nazis. The prison break was a turning point for Virginia. It proved that she wasn't just a spy, she was a leader. Her network in Lyon grew stronger, and her reputation as a fearless operative spread throughout the resistance. But success came at a cost. The Gestapo, humiliated by the escape, intensified their hunt for the Limping Lady. By the summer of 1942, the noose was tightening. The Gestapo had infiltrated the French resistance network in Paris, codenamed Gloria, and Virginia knew it was only a matter of time before they traced the connections back to Lyon. A man calling himself Robert Alish, posing as a priest, approached her, claiming to be an agent of Gloria. Virginia was suspicious. Something about him didn't add up. When news broke that Gloria had been compromised and its members arrested, her instincts were confirmed. Alish was a German agent. Virginia knew she had to act fast. She sent a coded message to London, warning them of the infiltration, then began dismantling her network. She burned documents, changed safe houses, and warned her contacts to go into hiding. But she couldn't stay in Lyon any longer. The Gestapo was closing in, and it was time to leave. Escaping France wasn't easy. The only viable route was across the Pyrenees Mountains into Spain, a grueling journey for anyone, let alone someone with a wooden leg. Virginia traveled by train to Perpignan, then met a guide who would lead her across the mountains. The trek was brutal. The path was steep and rocky, the weather was cold and unforgiving, and Cuthbert dug into her stump, turning it into a bloody mess. At one point, she radioed London for help, signing off with a joke. "Cuthbert is giving me trouble." The SOE, not realizing Cuthbert was her leg, replied, "If Cuthbert is troublesome, eliminate him." The exchange is often repeated as fact, but it's likely apocryphal. What is true is that Virginia made it to Spain, where she was briefly arrested for illegal entry. The U.S. Embassy secured her release, and she returned to London. But her ordeal wasn't over. When she met with Maurice Buckmaster, the head of SOE's F section, he refused to send her back to France. Her cover was blown, her face was on wanted posters, and the risks were too great. Virginia wasn't ready to give up. If the SOE wouldn't send her back, she'd find another way. In 1944, Virginia joined the U.S. Office of Strategic Services, OSS, the precursor to the CIA. Under the codename Diane, she returned to France, this time to Brittany, where she coordinated resistance efforts ahead of the D-Day invasions. Her mission was to sabotage German communications, gather intelligence, and prepare the resistance for the Allied landing. She arrived in June 1944, just days before D-Day. Working with a team of resistance fighters, she organized airdrops of weapons and supplies, trained local recruits in guerrilla tactics, and called in airstrikes to destroy German supply lines. She even led a team of resistance fighters in capturing 500 German soldiers before Allied forces arrived. One of her most critical operations was the sabotage of a German communications tower. Using explosives provided by the OSS, she and her team destroyed the tower, cutting off German forces from their command. The operation was a success, and it played a key role in the Allied advance through Brittany. By the time the war ended, Virginia had organized a 1,500-strong resistance force, directed airstrikes that destroyed German supply lines, and captured hundreds of enemy soldiers. Her work in Brittany was instrumental in the Allied victory, and it cemented her legacy as one of the most effective spies of the war. After the war, Virginia joined the newly formed CIA. Unlike her wartime exploits, her post-war career was less dramatic, but no less groundbreaking. She worked in operational roles, training new agents, and contributing to counterintelligence efforts. She wasn't just relegated to desk jobs. She helped shape the agency's early operations, breaking barriers as one of its first female operatives. In 1950, she married Paul Guyot, a fellow OSS operative she had met during the war. They lived quietly in Barnesville, Maryland, where Virginia died on July 8, 1982. She was 76 years old. Her wartime achievements earned her some of the highest honors from both the British and American governments, including the Distinguished Service Cross, the only civilian woman to receive it during World War II, the Member of the Order of the British Empire, MBE, the Croix de Guerre from France. Yet despite these accolades, her story was largely forgotten by the public. The CIA, initially reluctant to acknowledge her contributions, later called her the most successful Allied female spy of World War II. The British SOE described her as the greatest heroine of the war. And the Nazis? They never caught her. Virginia's life as a spy was not just physically demanding, it was psychologically grueling. Operating behind enemy lines meant living in constant fear of discovery. She had to trust no one, not even her closest allies, for fear of betrayal. The isolation and paranoia took a toll, but Virginia never wavered. She once wrote in a letter to her mother, under a pseudonym, "I miss the sound of your voice, but I know I am where I need to be." The letter was never sent, but it offers a rare glimpse into the emotional cost of her work. Her resilience was remarkable, but it came at a price. After the war, she struggled to readjust to civilian life. The adrenaline of espionage was gone, replaced by the mundanity of everyday existence. She rarely spoke about her experiences, even to her husband. It was as if she had left that part of herself behind in France. Virginia Hall's life is a testament to the power of defiance. She refused to accept the limits imposed by her gender, her disability, or the expectations of her time. She turned her wooden leg into a disguise, her fluency in languages into a weapon, and her determination into a force that changed the course of history. Her story is a reminder that heroism isn't about being the strongest, the fastest, or the most obvious choice. It's about making the most of what you've got. Today, as we remember the heroes of World War II, let's not forget the ones who operated in the shadows, the ones who limped through enemy territory, who outsmarted tyrants, and who proved that courage isn't about having everything going for you. It's about refusing to give up. Virginia Hall's legacy is a call to action for all of us. If you ever find yourself facing a challenge that seems impossible, just ask yourself, What would Virginia Hall do? Then go do it. Thank you for watching. Our goal at Unbound American Stories is to share the amazing stories of those that came before us but have been forgotten over time. We will tell their stories, focusing on not only their accomplishments, but on their lives and challenges they overcame to achieve greatness. If you enjoyed this episode and want to learn about other forgotten American heroes, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. Who should we uncover next? Did we miss an important fact? Did we get something wrong? Do you know more about today's hero that you would like to share? Let us know in the comments. Thank you for watching, and until next time, keep the flame of curiosity alive.